Hey, it's Meggie Kay. So a couple of months ago, I made part one of what this video is going to be about, where I cleaned up my life, gave some tips about moving abroad or preparing to move abroad, and did a personal update. So today in this video, I'm kind of going to be expanding on that, where we are going to be packing, and I am going to give some tips, things to think about when packing your entire life into a suitcase to move abroad, and a little bit more of an update because I have a plan now. So with my last update, I basically left it as I don't know what I want to do, I don't know where I want to go, and I just know I'm not staying in Toronto. Now I have a plan for at least the first bit of 2023, and I am moving to the Rocky Mountains. So I'm not moving abroad, but I am moving across the country, and I do have to fit my entire life into a single suitcase. And I kind of keep the same mentality as if I was moving abroad. If you have followed me for a bit, you would know that I actually used to live in Lake Louise before starting grad school, moved to Toronto, did grad school, and now I'm actually going back to Lake Louise. And I am actually very excited. Even though this isn't something new, I'm not going abroad, I am still very excited to be going back to Lake Louise. I enjoyed living in Lake Louise, and I just think that right now it'd be a really good place for me. I'll be working at a hotel, and that is not what I studied in grad school, so it's not really a long-term career, but I will be in a good place to be able to build up my portfolio, maybe do some freelance work that is very much related to what I want to do long term. So just in general, I think it's a good place for me. And if you don't know, I actually studied environmental visual communications. So my dream job would actually be more some kind of conservation media production thing. And yeah, living in the middle of a national park is a good place for that. Right? So packing this time should be pretty easy for me because I've already got rid of all the dead weight in my life. That's what the other video was all about, is preparing. Now we're packing. And the thing is, when you're packing to move abroad or just putting your whole life into a suitcase, your mentality kind of is different than if you were packing for a trip. Trip packing is usually pretty specific, and you have very clear checklists of what to bring for however long you're going to be away. But if you don't have an end date to your trip, you gotta approach it a little bit differently. So I guess first things to know, my first tip, if you're going to be packing your whole life in a suitcase, is things to leave behind, or at least consider leaving behind. A big one for me is actually toiletries. I do bring some toiletries, but if you're moving abroad or moving in general, you're going to have to be repurchasing these things anyways. So filling up a suitcase with a bunch of heavy, leakable things, I don't think that's a good idea. And I usually try and avoid that. And for the last few months, if I've run out of something, I just don't repurchase it if it's not necessary. Last week I bought toothpaste because I ran out of toothpaste, and I cannot go a single day without toothpaste. But when I ran out of my face toner, I let that one go because I can survive a little bit without face toner, and then once I get to my location, I will just buy it there. The next thing to think about maybe leaving behind is clothes. Climate inappropriate clothing. This was a big one when I moved from Canada to Singapore. I do not need a big winter coat from Canada while living in Singapore, so I left all of that behind. It's kind of opposite of what I'm doing now, whereas I'm moving to the Rocky Mountains in the middle of winter. I'm packing all of my ski gear because this is going to be useful. I'm also leaving behind most of my t-shirts and shorts. I'm not going to need that for a while, and when I do want those things, I could always get them shipped to me, that kind of stuff. But fill it up with things you're going to need right away and leave the climate inappropriate stuff behind. And the last thing I would consider just like leaving behind are things you don't frequently use. Like, I'm thinking books that you've already read, or stuffed animals, or like a yoga mat. I will be leaving my yoga mat at my mother's house. She can use it, it's fine. You know, the things you have around that are really nice and you enjoy, but aren't exactly necessary or useful. So unless it is like super sentimental to you, I would say leave it behind, put it in storage, pack it up to be shipped to you later, donate it, give it to a friend. It's time to let those things go. Like my yoga mat that I'm leaving behind, it's not really necessary for me. It's easily replaceable, and like I'm not going to put it in my suitcase and bring it with me. It's not that important. If I get out there and I really want a yoga mat, I will buy another one. Packing, like this is the moment when you realize that you weren't as cutthroat as you needed to be when you were doing the cleaning out portion and the preparation portion. Or it's finally time to pull the trigger on certain items like a yoga mat. I was using that in between cleaning up my life and now actually packing. But yeah, definitely not bringing it with me. One thing I'm really excited about with this move specifically right now is that I will be able to go skiing again. And one of the really good things about actually going back to where I used to be rather than like going somewhere new is that I might be able to get my ski gear back. I actually left all of my ski gear in the apartment I used to have. And it was mostly because it just wasn't worth bringing them home. Like I bought all of my gear used, and to get a bag for it and the extra cost on the airline, all of that, it was basically going to cost me just as much to bring them back to Ontario than it did to buy them in the first place. And I was going to sell them, but like I just never got around to it. So I left it there, and kind of like whoever comes after me can like have them if they want it. So if no one has claimed them yet, I can reclaim them and not spend more money buying new gear. Awesome. But I was thinking about it, and in the case that if someone has claimed them, that's fine. I might try snowboarding. I have always wanted to snowboard. I would play like snowboarding video games when I was growing up, but I wasn't allowed to snowboard. They basically forced us to learn how to ski when I was living in Europe. And that's kind of a long story. I'm not going to get into it, but basically like I've never had the opportunity to really learn how to snowboard. But yeah, if I go back there and I don't have my old ski gear waiting for me, I think it's finally time to learn how to snowboard, and I think that is so cool for me. So yes, very excited in general to be able to ski or maybe potentially learn how to snowboard. Very excited about this. So my second kind of like packing tip for moving abroad would be to think of unusual things that you might want. This is where packing for a trip and packing to move abroad really start to get very different. Probably like a quarter to a half of this suitcase is stuff I would never consider bringing on a trip ever, but I'm definitely putting in my suitcase. And because I feel like this would differ quite a bit from person to person, instead of like listing a category or whatever, I'm just gonna talk about like some of the weird things I will be packing, and maybe it'll give you some ideas of unusual things you might wanna think about packing. The first thing on the list are lights. These are string lights I had up in my apartment. I actually bought these when I was living in Lake Louise last time because there was no room in my bedroom for like a lamp or anything like that. And I really hate having big overhead lighting on when I'm just trying to like relax and like read a book or something. Like it's super annoying. I really don't like overhead lighting. So I bought these little string lights that I could like hang up. So I know these are going to be very useful for me since they were very useful for me last time. So they are going in to my suitcase. The next unusual thing I'm bringing is like kitchen stuff. So I have some chopsticks, some metal straws, water bottle. And while the kitchens in the apartment I'll be moving into is fully stocked, there are things I frequently use, like chopsticks, that they don't have. And these are small enough and light enough. It doesn't really do much in terms of weight. And because I use them so frequently, it's just easier to pack it. And yeah, doesn't actually make much of a difference in the suitcase, so why not do it? The next thing is bags. So I'm not going to be walking around with my suitcase or my carry-on electronic backpack on a regular basis. So packing smaller bags is really important. So I have like my little daily backpack. I have a small black bag. Also at the very bottom of this, I put my 30-liter backpack bag, like hiking bag, that I use for like weekend trips and stuff. I was considering bringing my big backpacking backpack, my like 65-liter, but I also don't think I'll be doing any kind of big trip that would require that bag for a while at least. So like my little like weekend backpacking bag would be more than enough. So that's in here, as well as a few smaller bags. All right, so that's mostly what I am packing. I do need to put the tripod that my camera is currently sitting on in here too, so it's not completely done. I also need to finish up packing my electronic carry-on bag. But yes, I am ready to move again, and it's good. Like, I have a full-time job, so I can live and pay back my student loans. I am in a good position to develop my portfolio a bit more, maybe do some freelance work and like really get moving on a long-term career. And I'm also going to just be in a really fun place. So good things all around with this move back to the Canadian Rockies. And since I'll be moving back to the Canadian Rockies, if you have any questions about that area or traveling around Banff or living in a national park or anything like that, let me know, because obviously that is where I'm going. So I will have videos about that, at least for a little bit. Like I said, I don't know like when my end date would be or where I might go next, but I think for the first part of 2023, this is going to be a really good place for me, and I'm really excited to go back there. So this is also the first time I've ever like gone back to a place I lived before. Usually I move to a new place, not ever been to that place before, like never even visiting the places that I lived before. And then I leave those places and then I never go back. This is the first time in my life I am returning to a place I have lived before. So that's interesting. Fun fact, I guess. So yeah, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, because I will be back with more soon. Bye.